Yes, so my paper was called The Use of Opiates in the 19th Century England, and I chose to write it within the fields of English and of biotechnology. And the reason why I chose biotechnology was because I really thought that a scientific and a science approach would allow a scientific exploration of the drug, see how it biologically, what it biologically did to your body, and at the same time look at the chemical and the technologically aspect of it. How was it produced? What chemicals do you find in this plant? Which it really is a plant in the poppy seeds. How do you extract them from the plant? And of course, what biologically happens to your body when you use these drugs and they come into your system. And then by that, looking at the effects on your brain and your body. And that was the scientific approach. While I thought that the English field would make it possible to analyze and of course interpret different texts from the time, and just really see how opiates were portrayed by these well-known authors in this century. And I chose this particular topic while English literature really flourished in this period. A lot of great literature was produced, and the paper could analyze the portrayal of opiates in both the Romantic period and in the Victorian age as well, because I chose the whole 19th century, and me deciding this would allow me to make some kind of comparison and see how these different literary approaches, how it influenced the portrayal of what I think is a portrayal of a drug abuse of opium. And that's also why it allowed the paper to make a comparison between Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray from the Victorian age and John Keats's Ode to a Nightingale, because of their common theme, or at least their focus, what the paper kind of says is a focus and a theme of opiates and the abuse and what opiates does to the subject. And I thought that this scientific and biotechnological aspect could complement the English aspect in a way that, with a scientific ballast, the paper analyzing first of all, very at the beginning of the paper, analyzing what happens to the body, really just facts on the table, medical knowledge, what happens to the brain, what happens to the body. And then when the paper has gained this ballast, you can say, the paper could critically analyze the poem and this fictional novel, and work as kind of a verifying authority. Not only could it kind of authorize the authors, as Oscar Wilde and John Keats, and say, okay, what the things that are saying, are they actually true? But not just the authors. It could also kind of look at this century and see really what was thought was the effects of drugs at this time. Because if the paper has analyzed, and with this biotechnological knowledge in this baggage as a ballast, it can really tell a story and focus on, okay, if these authors thought this at this time and at the century, but with what we know now, then this must be the the common thought about drugs in the 19th century. And then our scientific knowledge and our ballast in the paper kind of allows us to bring up start a debate and the discussion of, okay, we know this and this now. Maybe they were excused in the 19th century. They didn't know as much as we did. But then why is drug abuse a ongoing problem in today's society? And we wouldn't be able to have that discussion if we only had our English approach to these texts. But the scientific field allows us to the paper, really, it allows the paper to begin this debate, you can say. And that's something that only opiates could provide and offer. So it's kind of their medium to this different world. And in Thomas de Quincey's autobiography, he purposely tries to portray opiums as what they are, but at the same time he has a more nuanced way. Him not being medical, he doesn't have any medical knowledge, but he's just an opium eater, as he calls it himself. So he can, in a very subjective way, but really believable way, he makes all these nuances of the advantages and the disadvantages of opiates and psychoactive drugs in general, and how they, in spite of their pain relieving and recreational qualities that the biotechnological field approves as well and acknowledge, opiates can scar a person's psyche to an extent where morals become irrelevant and the addict becomes kind of more distant from reality. And that's something that the paper concludes that you can see in the text, both the fictional text, but in Thomas de Quincey's autobiography as well. But in the scientific field, the biotechnological field, we can acknowledge again the physical things that the drugs does to your brain, and to your body. You will be able to make this reality escape, and you will feel better, and you will feel pain relief. But at the same time, the effects afterwards, the depression and so forth, is a factor that you have to keep in mind as well. Something that Thomas de Quincey saw, that he portrayed, and something that the science can underline. And that's again how you can see these two fields can help each other in a way, and portray the drugs in a more more in a broader perspective, really. And if we focus on the English aspect of the paper tries to use the hermeneutic spiral in the field of humanities, which the English academic subject is a part of, and tries to analyze and interpret the novel, poem, and autobiography with a specific theme in mind, and that is, of course, the use of opiates in this in this paper. And of course, you have to really keep in mind when you are using when you're using English and Danish and just all humanities, have to keep in mind that you're very subjective when you have a certain theme in mind, and you have a certain problem that you want to find a solution for, or you want to argue about something, and you have a certain tendency, and it's very difficult to be objective, but it's something that you should try, and the paper tries all along. And the Quincey's portrayal of drug was obvious and almost its only reason, hence its non-fictional character, and it says in the title, Confessions of an English Opium Eater. But the fiction in Dorian Gray and Ode to a Nightingale portrayed different themes as well, not just opiates. But nevertheless, the paper found it reasonable to believe that, and with its scientific ballast, that quotes has that they all indicate a use of opiates as an element, or at least a tool to this reality escape and urge to seize the moment and a perishable and decadent lifestyle, which is an ongoing theme in both texts. And it depicts, and the paper really argues that it also partly encourages an escape from reality and a seek of the sublime. And this was a feeling, and this was a way to escape reality that opium as an active biological drug could provide, and that's something that this paper concludes and argues for.